Don Waddell, I think my big question is, why now? Why Columbus? You've been an NHL GM for 18 years. Surely you could have gone to Michigan and began working on your cars and spending more time with your grandkids. Why did you decide to jump back in?
Yeah, no, I just felt that we had a good run in Carolina, and it was time for me to move on from there. And, I obviously didn't know what was going to happen. I wanted to work. There's no doubt about it. And so when I got permission to talk, obviously talked to a few teams, Columbus jumped out and was very exciting from my standpoint because, I said at my age, my experience, I wasn't looking to go for a rebuild. I want to go someplace that we have a chance to make a difference and make a run at things. And so, I've said all along, this team's got the cupboards aren't bare. There's some pieces, obviously, that are good pieces, some good players moving forward. Obviously, some contracts that we got to deal with that could potentially be issues. But it was an exciting opportunity. When I came in, I met with Mike Priest and the ownership here. I just got real comfortable that this was a good place for me and excited for this new opportunity.
So you mentioned the cupboards and certainly everyone's excited in Columbus about the prospects that are on the way. I mean, some of these draft picks this is going to fill out a team for a long time. But some other people might look at this group and say, hey, these have been two really tough seasons on a team that was supposed to be on the rise. In your mind, I'm looking at it from afar saying, hey, you have a patient owner, you've got great facilities, unbelievable fan base that's dedicated. Why hasn't this team in recent years gotten over the hump?
Well, that's something that, I've been on the job for literally less than 5 days that I'm meeting with everybody in the staff individually and getting everybody's opinion. I'm a sponge right now, Frank. It's, I'm learning the organization. I know the players from being a competitor in the league. Don't know all their young players, of course. Some things have gone not probably the way they would want them to go. And, as I said, there's some things we definitely have to address, and we will in the upcoming period of time. I know right now, take all the information I can get. And as we make decisions, there'll be decisions that will help us not only today, but protect our future. So I think there's a good opportunity here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what is your first order of business? A lot of people have asked about the status of Pascal Vincent. Have you had a chance to meet with him, and what's the status there?
Yeah, no, I've spent 15 minutes with him last week. Cause when I got job on Wednesday, the press conference, our PR staff had me just doing PR for 2 days. Then we had our amateur meetings going on here. So I jumped on Friday to, ask them to keep the top 10 players to the last day so I could be part of it. So I spent 15 minutes or so. In the upcoming days, I'm going to spend a lot of time with Pascal. And I don't know Pascal. I know him, watch him behind the bench. First time I ever met him was the other day. So I need to spend some time with him, and we'll figure out whether him and I are made for each other.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned being a sponge. You take over. It's basically June. You've got the draft in short order. The combine's going on right now as we speak. Free agency's just a couple days beyond that. What else jumps to the top of your priority list?
Well, as I've said, the draft and free agency, the NHL is not changing those dates. We know we got to prepare for those. We know those are locked solid. We're bringing all the pro guys in next week to go through pro meetings. I want to hear their take on our team, the depth of our team. And then, we'll identify needs potentially and start looking at the free agent list. And as you know, we got to be prepared because at the draft, a lot happens. A lot of trades happen at the draft. So we got to be prepared before we go into the draft, not only for who we're going to select throughout the draft, but if we are looking to make any moves and who might be available and who are we willing to give up? That's probably the bigger question for me right now. Not, again, I know these guys, watch them compete, but I want to get everybody's input before I make those kind of decisions.
And how aggressive do you plan to be?
Well, I always say you can't force something to happen. You got to, let things play out. And, we have a little history of making a few deals at draft day. So if there's I'm not going to say we're going to make a deal just for the sake of making a deal because that makes no sense. But if anything that's on the table that we feel makes our team better, we got to look to do that. We're not trying to just capture draft picks. We're not trying to look further down the road. We're looking at today, what can help us as we move forward for the 24-25 season.
And that's a bit of a tough blend, right? Because you've got guys that are on the way that are clearly going to mean something. You can't rush the process. How do you find that proper balance to put this team on the right path to compete starting this season, but also keep an eye on 3, 4, or 5 years down the line?
Yeah, the one thing we can't lose is the patience with our young players, because if you rush a player that's not quite ready yet, you can really set his development back for multiple years. We've seen it happen over and over again. So we got to be careful about that. So we got some young players that obviously have played here the last little bit, obviously with Johnson and Fantilli being hurt. Fantilli played half the year, Johnson being hurt. Those are guys that we know are going to be NHL players. So, those type of players that we want to certainly look to not force in a lineup, make them earn it. If they earn it, they will be in the lineup. But how many of those guys can you have at once? That is a big question. We got, as I said before, we got some cap space. We got some contracts we have to figure out what we're going to do with. And if we can work it all out, we would absolutely be able to dip our toe into the free agent market.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk about those players, Johnson, Fantilli, you could probably throw Jiricek in there at some point the last few years, Cole Sillinger. Not asking you to be critical at all of the previous regime and or coaching staff, but it's one thing to draft players. It's another thing to develop players and put them in the proper positions to succeed. Has that happened? Has part of that, does that need a little bit more nurturing as you step into the role?
Well, as I said, I've been here 5 days. So, that's why I'm meeting with all these different individuals to find out what the process has been. The word process is meaningful, because if you don't have a plan and a process of how you're going to deal with these young players, you'll never have success. You may hit on a player here and there because of their skill level, but you have to identify what's best for this player. Is it best staying in junior for a year, playing in college, wherever he's playing, or is it better to turn him pro and get him some experience in the American League? These are all things, Frank, that I'm working through right now. So I don't have all the answers. I'll never have all the answers, but I'll have a better picture come later in the summer.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to looking at your roster and the shape of it, is there a position that you'd like to really key in and focus on to start?
Yeah, we'll go through it next week. I've looked at it many, many times. It's probably every position can probably be addressed. We have some good pieces, like I said, and we'll have some decisions to make with some of these guys. But I think if you look at the roster, I wouldn't say there's anything that we wouldn't want to look at, because that would be foolish. We certainly need scoring. We need to, last year we had the worst goals against in the Eastern Conference. I think that's an area you got to address. I think that's one that you can fix pretty easily. Goal scoring is always at a premium. So certainly we need to look and try to address it. Doesn't mean you're always going to address it, but we're going to be prepared to try to address it.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of, I've seen you mention and talk about, and one of the big talking points has been Elvis Merzlikins in net. Obviously a guy that you valued and maybe even looked at during your time in Carolina. What is he, how do you address that situation with him? Does that start with a conversation?
Oh, 100%. The word is he's coming back to Columbus in middle of June. That would be as soon as he gets back, first person to sit down with. Obviously, I'll talk to our goalie coach, Nick Backstrom, prior to that, get everybody's take. But what I've said there is, this is a guy that was rolling along very well, and then obviously had some personal things happen in his life, and he's never bounced back from it. So as he completely lost himself as confidence, he lost his ability to play. As an organization, we have to do everything possible that we can to put him in a spot to succeed. And then it's up to him. So that's going to be our plan. We're going to address this dead on and try to get a result at the end of the summer as we start for the season, getting back to where he was because I think he could be a hell of a goalie.
Mm-hmm. I need to ask about Patrik Laine, since you mentioned scoring. Another guy that has had some various challenges at different points in his career. He strikes me as someone that's probably a bit hard on himself. I also saw him recently in a social media post that he's got a sling on his arm. What's his health status, and how do you get such a talented player like Patrik Laine to bounce back?
Yeah, he's one of the calls I'm going to make here the next day or so. Him and his representation, see where he's at. I know he had the shoulder. I think it was more of a cleanup. They didn't think it was anything too serious. I know he just had that not too long ago. So, you're talking about a difference maker as a player. He could be a difference maker. The big thing, and what I've talked to players about being here, do you want to be part of the solution or not? We want players that want to play for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And certainly if he's got his mindset made up right, I know him as a player, don't know him as an individual at all, know him as a player. We need these types of players to have success moving forward.
When you talk about players that want to be in Columbus, that was, I think, one of the big things that you guys were able to put in place in Carolina during your tenure there. Everyone bought in, and that starts with your coach. It starts with your owner, different people along the way. In terms of building up that culture, Columbus, I mentioned all the positive and bright spots in terms of ownership is fantastic, and the facilities, you've mentioned them, and just in terms of how you've been impressed since you've gotten there. What are some other things that you can help bring with you from Carolina in terms of establishing a place that people want to be in?
Yeah. Well, first, culture is such an overused word because everybody wants culture, but how do you get to culture? You can't just say, okay, we want culture. You got to get there. It all starts at the top, works way down from myself to the coaches, to the players. And, the one big thing, and, it starts with accountability. Accountability to me is where everything starts. And with accountability is players that want to be part of a winning organization, not an individual that wants to have success as a player, because there's a big difference. We've seen a lot of good players that have never been on winning teams, the great stats, all that. We want players that, want to be part of a successful team. Stats come with it if you have success, but not one individual can lead a team and have success from a team if we don't buy in as a team. So I think it's important right off the start that accountability, create the mindset that we're all in this thing together. We're all on the same page. We all want to be here. That's where it all starts. And then eventually, it trickles down to the players. Players got to take some ownership in this. Management, coaches can do their part. We have to do our part. But players have to do their part too when it comes to all the things we talked about.
Don, you've taken on accountability in your role in previous stops. You're also a collaborative guy, though. How will you bring some of the things that you've learned just from your most recent tenure in Carolina to Columbus in terms of, working with everyone on your staff to make the best decisions?
Yeah, well, first, just what I said about a team, there's no individual, and that includes myself, that's going to make decisions and think that I've always made the right decision. This is why you surround yourself with good people, and that's what I'm doing right now as I go through the staff, meeting with the different management to see where everybody's mindset is, how they feel about the organization. They want to be part of the solution as we move forward. But you usually, you have your scouts, you have lots of recommendations. And then you'll have a smaller group that will sit down and go through what your options are. And eventually, you got to make the decision, and I'll have to be accountable for that. But I think it's important that you utilize all the assets you have to make a decision before a decision is made.
In terms of being open with working with different members of your staff, one of the big talking points, just sort of nationally around the league was, hey, you've got a young guy that just kind of recently stopped playing a few years ago, and Rick Nash. Will he be part of your team, and will you help sort of, shepherd along his career as well as he works his way through the front office?
Yeah, I sure hope so. I met with Rick just for a few minutes yesterday. We got a meeting scheduled this week with him. Obviously, I know him great as a player, don't know him as an individual. But I know everything I've heard so far has been very positive. That he wants to be here. He wants to be part of the management group. So that is music to my ears, because they have somebody that, with his experience, coming off a great playing career, now getting involved with Team Canada, with the World. I mean, to me, these are the type of people you want to surround yourself with, that want to work hard to get to that next step. So I'm hoping that we can figure everything out with Rick for sure.
And checks one of those big boxes too, in terms of wanting to be in Columbus and be a Blue Jacket.
Yeah, absolutely. He moved back here after his career and made his home here, and is raising his family. So absolutely.
So you're scheduled to pick number 4 overall, big decision coming up later this month. Do you have any restrictions? Are you allowed to be at the table in terms of draft prep and making those calls?
Yeah, 100%. And we worked it out early on there, right after I resigned. And, so to answer your question, there's no restrictions, can be there. I'm officially a Blue Jacket, make all the decisions that I need to make. So I'm looking forward to draft day.
You wore many different hats in Carolina. You had a ton of different business responsibilities on top of being the GM of a team. What's it going to be like to have a lot of that off your plate and just to be able to focus on the hockey?
Well, first of all, I love to work. So the work part of it is just, as you said, it's just juggling a lot of different things. But be able to focus here just on hockey is critically important, because of where we are and where we want to get. Does it make it any easier? I think it's a little bit the opposite here. There's probably a little more pressure because of where the franchise has been and where we want to go. And that's something I love, that challenge to try to take this thing to the next step, which I think we can. So, yeah, just to focus on what I need to do on a day-to-day is great. And we'll figure it out in time.
Will you still be sitting in on some business stuff? Will you bend Mike Priest's ear from time to time?
I told Mike I'm here to assist as ever they need it. And I enjoy that part of the business. So if I can help, I know what it's like in the sales world for tickets and sponsorship and all that. And if I can assist in any way, I'm here. I'm not going to interfere at all with what they run. Good people here have run a good business, but I'm just here as an asset if they need me.
It's in your blood. You can't get it out of you. Just final question, Don. You were part of helping turn around a franchise that had a ton of success in Carolina, won a Stanley Cup, and then hit a dark period of time. And for the last 6 years was second in the league in wins and a perennial contender to win the Stanley Cup, even if things didn't necessarily work out in the end. What's one thing you'd like to carry with you? Like what do you bring with you to, aside from experience, to Columbus that, should give Blue Jackets fans hope that you can begin to turn this around?
Well, when we started here in Carolina, we talked about doing it the right way. And the one thing you don't want to do is, and I touched on it before, is mortgage the future to win today, because what you want to do, and I think we can do this with the setup we have, is once we get there, which hopefully is very soon, that you can have a run consistently for multiple years where you're not worried about, we went in Carolina worried about making the playoffs, and then it was strictly after year 2, after making it 2 years in a row and going to the conference finals, that wasn't good enough. Now it was, winning a cup. And that's where we got to get here. We got to get the mindset, playoffs obviously is the first place you got to start, but you got to get the mindset that, you're expected to make the playoffs year after year after year. And the ultimate goal is to win the Stanley Cup.
Don, wish you all the best. Love to see you back in a new post in Columbus, and looking forward to watching it all come together. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Yeah, a pleasure to be with you, Frank. Thank you.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.